Vichitanimanovishnam Sasitam Yena Bhutare Swanam Vipakatamahantara Shishvam Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Krishnaya Bhutare Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravati Prasad Nirvishesha Shunyavati Pasad Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Radha Shiva Gaura Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Today we're celebrating Harinam Diksha and Upanaya Diksha. Upanaya means thread. Of course, in this case, there won't be a physical thread. But the thread means to connect oneself to the 9 classes of Bhakti Yoga. So every devotee of the Lord, this is the recommendation of Sri Prahlad Maharaj. When his demoniac father asked him, where did he get this knowledge? And where was this coming from? Where was his attraction to Vishnu coming from? He said, Mater Krishna Parakosato Va Nito Vipadvita Griha Bratana. That one who is Griha Brata like you, he said, my dear demoniac father, you could never understand. It's actually coming from the heart of everyone. And how do we get this Krishna Bhakti? Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Shvaram, Vadasera. This is how we do it. Krishna Bhakti is natural for the soul, and simply by awakening that natural loving propensity for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then we can understand our original position as a servant of Krishna. So initiation, Harinam initiation, actually Harinam initiation really comes from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He brought the holy name in a very special form. Krishna is the Adi Purusha, the original person. But Krishna has many expansions. And the holy name also has many expansions because the holy name is Krishna. So in his most merciful expansion, the holy name takes the form of the Mahamantra. And the Mahamantra, imbued with the mood of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, although it reaches to the highest realm of Goloka Vrindavan, extends himself all the way to the lowest position. All there has to be is sincerity. Srila Prabhupada, one time devotees asked Srila Prabhupada, how can I become sincere? And Srila Prabhupada said, be sincere. Otherwise, it's not some mechanical thing. It's actually a condition of the heart. And being sincere, Srila Prabhupada said, being sincere is very simple. You follow strictly these 4 regulated principles, and you chant very, very carefully, every day without fail, minimum 16 rounds of Mahamantra. So this is our standard for Harinam initiation. To connect ourselves with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the beginning stage. Ado Shraddha, Sadhu Sangha, and then Bhajana Kriya. These are the initial stages of bhakti. We have some faith based on hearing, based on taking prasad, hearing through the tongue. Prasada means hearing through the tongue. And when we hear from Scripture, that means tasting through the ears. So we hear through the tongue and we taste through the ears. That's bhakti. Krishna can do anything. Anganiyasya sakalavendriya vittimanti pashanti bandhikaryanti chiran jaganti. He can do anything with any one of his limbs, but also a devotee becomes very expert in tasting through the ears. Vibandi bhagavatam atmatam satam katamritam. That we take this katamritam, this nectar of Krishna Katha, and we drink it through the ears. Shri Parikshit Maharaj said to Shukadeva Goswami, when he offered him, he said, if you want, we can take a break and stop for some time. He said, no. He said, now, first I was thirsty, and that being thirsty gave me so much trouble. So now I'm satisfying my thirst through the ears. Best way to drink. And if we learn to drink through our ears, then we will be satisfied. Even if we're hungry, physically hungry, thirsty, it doesn't matter. Just like Madhavendra Puri, he went to Govardhan on his coming to Vrindavan, and he was in such ecstasy that he had not eaten for 3 days, a little more than 3 days. And he sat down and he began to remember Krishna, and his body was shivering in ecstasy. And he lost external consciousness. And then a cowherd boy appeared before him and said, in my village, no one fasts. So actually, in Krishna consciousness, there is no fasting. But we may do some penance. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his Harinam Chintamani says that he describes the 26 qualities of a devotee. And he says one of them is Droha Brata, that one should do penance but without causing harm to the body. Otherwise, we shouldn't torture the body. That's not the purpose of penance. Just like Brikasura did his penance by cutting off layers of skin and offering them into the fire. So Lord Shiva, he wasn't attracted, he was repulsed by the offering. But just to stop him, he said, what do you want? I'll give you anything you want. Just have one blessing that whoever's head I touch, that it will fall off. Then immediately he went after Lord Shiva. So this is the position of an artificial disciple. He's thinking, what can I get for myself? Just like Rupa Goswami, he's describing the process of connecting with the spiritual master. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu described it originally. Guru Padashraya, Diksha, Gurura Sevana. And then Sadharma, Shiksha, Pricha, and Sadhu, Margana, Margana. So he said, the first thing you do, Guru Padashraya. Srila Prabhupada said many times that the real initiation means Guru Padashraya, taking shelter of the spiritual master. Taking shelter of the spiritual master is not an external declaration. It is an act of the heart. When the heart only wants to do, just like we say every day, Arana Korino Mani Asha, that the only desire within my mind, within my heart, is to hear the instructions coming from the lotus mouth of the spiritual master. So this is Guru Padashraya. And then Diksha. Then afterwards comes Diksha. Sometimes when we're in external consciousness, or we're very externally motivated, then we want initiation without Guru Parashara. We want some thinking that this is some external thing, that if I get initiated, something will happen. I'll get some blessing, get some protection. But spiritual initiation is not an insurance policy. It is actually taking shelter of Krishna through Krishna's devotee, because Krishna himself says, anyone who says that he is my devotee is not my devotee. But he who says he is devotee of my devotee, that is my devotee. That is the real devotee. So, Guru Parashraya Diksha, Guru Ra Sevana. And Diksha means Guru Ra Sevana. We must serve the spiritual master. At least, at a very minimum, follow the four regulated principles, chant 16 rounds. Unfortunately, I've seen that when there's the slightest provocation in life, then the first thing people do is stop chanting 16 rounds. When actually, chanting more rounds is the solution. If there's a problem, we should chant more. We should take more shelter of Krishna. If there's some difficulty. Because there's no guarantee that we can solve any particular situation in life. There's no guarantee. But there is a guarantee that we can solve all our problems by chanting the Holy Name. Otherwise, there's no guarantee that you can pay every debt, or that you can make friends with everyone, or that you can save a marriage, or that you can have a marriage. There's no guarantee. But the one thing is guaranteed: if you chant the holy name of Krishna. Srila Prabhupada said, if you strictly follow these four regulative principles, and you chant the holy name minimum 16 rounds, and do some sincere service, that Krishna will take notice. And then Krishna will give you further indication how we can advance more. So Guru Ra Sevana. And then Sadharma Shiksha. One should take instruction in Sadharma. There's so many dharmas. Kula Dharma, Vibhasa Dharma, getting married, having family, working, so many different types of dharma. Our Arjuna, in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, he argues about all these different kinds of dharma and how we have to satisfy them. And Krishna immediately rejects it. He said, no. Sadharma, real dharma, means to follow me, to do what Krishna wants. That is Sadharma. Sadharma, everything else that we discussed the other day. Smartavya Satatam Vishnu Vismartavya Najata Chit. That real understanding of spiritual life means that we always remember Krishna and never forget Him at any moment. And every other rule and regulation, every other prohibition or recommendation is subservient to these two principles. So this is the purpose of taking shelter. Tasmat Guru Prasad that the purpose of taking initiation, Tasmat Guru Prasad is to Shreya Uttamam, Mat Shreya Uttamam. That one looks for the ultimate benefit in life. And what is the ultimate benefit? Jignasu Shreya Uttamam. Know that ultimate benefit. And that is Krishna. The ultimate benefit in life is to serve Krishna. So, a devotee does these things, inquires about this, and Pricha. He takes instruction and he inquires. And then the sadhu, Marganu Marganam. And then, following the path chalked out by saintly persons, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that also means associating with Vaishnava. If you don't associate with saintly persons, with sadhus, Srila Prabhupada also mentions that in the 7th canto of the Bhagavatam, that you will never you will never be successful in spiritual life. Sometimes we may, of course, Srila Prabhupada also mentions that we have to find the right sadhus, meaning those sadhus who are strictly following. Even if they may have some fault, they may have some personality discrepancy, but that is not the reason for not associating with the Vaishnava. Just like Vamsidas Babaji, from an external point of view, none of us would have ever been able to associate with him. He was very, very, from an external point of view, you could say very eccentric, because his love of Krishna was so deep that he was living with Krishna. So sometimes he would start laughing, sometimes he would start crying, sometimes he would chastise everyone around him, sometimes he would yell at people, sometimes he would grab someone's feet. So externally speaking, if we met Vamsidas Babaji in the street, we would probably think this person is very eccentric. I don't want to do that. But if you know who he is, then you would want his association. So personality considerations or quirks, they're not so important. And then, so associating with Vaishnavas is very important. So Rupa Goswami took that particular verse and he went a little bit deeper. First he said, Guru Parashrayas Tasmat, you take shelter of the spiritual master, Krishna Diksha Shiksha, no? And you take initiation, both Diksha and Shiksha, meaning that you follow the path of Krishna consciousness by the rules and regulations of Diksha and by the rules and regulations of Shiksha, meaning that one is always searching for Krishna. When we take Shiksha, Diksha is obligatory, and Shiksha comes from enthusiasm to advance in spiritual life. When we take Shiksha, it's because we want to advance, we want to come to the next stage of Krishna consciousness. Diksha is required, Shiksha is essential. And then Rupa Goswami says, Vishram na Guru Seva. So Vishram na means with great intimacy. With great intimacy, meaning one holds the service to the Guru as the most intimate part of my existence. And then sadhu-vartman ubhadanam. And one follows the path chalked out by the parambara. Otherwise, sadhu-vartman ubhadanam or sadhu-margan marganam means that we don't think I will only follow my Guru. I follow my Guru exclusively, but I see within that following to serve all of the Vaishnavas. Not that I just serve my Guru and then everybody else is excluded, but I serve all of the Vaishnavas. And then he says there's some more, some other things that you have to do. The other thing is that Sadharma, Pricha, inquire about Sadharma, and Bodhadityaga Krishnasya Hitave. And he used the word Hitave, Krishnasya Hitave. That means that we dedicate everything for Krishna's pleasure. If he would have said Hetu, that means everything is for my pleasure. But Hitave means everything is for Krishna's pleasure. And Bhoga Adi, H.H.Guru Prasad Swami says, Bhoga Adi means that sense gratification, attachment to family, friends, society, love, etc., everything associated with this material body and this material world, we give it up. Giving it up doesn't mean we don't have it. Doesn't mean we don't have family, doesn't mean we don't have friends. But it means all of them are within our circle of Krishna consciousness. And it also means that we include everything in Krishna consciousness. Every desire, every need, every aspect of our very existence we include in our Krishna consciousness. So, so this is the point. Everything has to be dedicated to Krishna. So in the case of first initiation, Harinam Diksha, Srila Prabhupada said when in his second trip to Mexico, he had an initiation ceremony, and so because he obviously didn't speak Spanish, he told the devotee, one of the sannyasis there, he said, so you explain. So he began the lecture, he was telling some story. Srila Prabhupada in the middle of the story said, stop this nonsense story. Well, he didn't speak Spanish, but Krishna speaks to him. Krishna also knows Spanish. Krishna's multilingual. So just somehow or another, Krishna told Srila Prabhupada what he said. He said, stop this nonsense story. Tell them about the 10 offenses. So, the 10 offenses is very interesting. Of course, the first offense, to blaspheme those Vaishnava devotees who dedicate themselves to the Sankirtan movement, to preaching the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur goes into a very elaborate definition of what is a Vaishnava. He says the essential characteristic of a Vaishnava is surrender to Krishna. That anyone who is surrendered to Krishna, to some degree, to a great degree, to a partial degree, or to the fullest degree, or to speak of those who are surrendered to the fullest degree, that person we should never blaspheme, criticize, envy, in any way feel any ill feelings. In the Skanda Purana, it says there are 6 things you don't do to a Vaishnava. First, you don't kill them. That's pretty obvious. Kill Vaishnava. We should not envy them. We should not imitate them. We should not neglect them. We should not, and I forget the 5th one, but the last one is, if one does not feel happiness when one sees a Vaishnava, then one's destination is hell. When we see a Vaishnava, we may see so many faults in so many devotees. Of course, the first devotee we should see faults in is the one in the mirror. That's the first one. We should look at that one and analyze it very carefully. All of his faults. But we may not find it, but we should try anyway. But everyone has faults. But a devotee always looks for the wonderful characteristics and qualities of a Vaishnava. This is a devotee's focus. That Vaishnavas are so wonderful. We should be happy. We should be happy, just like Srila Prabhupada. Imagine if Srila Prabhupada would have had our attitude. He wouldn't even have gotten off the ship in Boston Harbor. He actually thought that. Srila Prabhupada said that. When I came there and I saw all these movement, he said, I saw the modes of passion and ignorance were so strong. This is his first impression. He said, my dear Krishna, I don't know what you want me to do here. I can't understand. Seeing all these people in this state of consciousness, what do you want me to do here? But anyway, I am your puppet. You simply make me dance and I will dance, dance, dance. He said, I have no love, I have no devotion, I have no knowledge, but I have full faith in the holy name. And then when Srila Prabhupada, he said later on in one lecture on, I think the appearance day of Bhaktisiddhanta, I can't remember appearance day or disappearance day, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he said that when I got off the ship, I was walking down the street and I saw everyone in the mode of ignorance and passion. And he said, I was thinking, when I explain the principles of bhakti to them, they will say, Swamiji, better you go home. As soon as I explain, they would tell me, better you go home. The Prabhupada said, but I taught these 4 regulated principles. And then I was thinking it would be impossible. And Srila Prabhupada said, yes, in Kali Yuga, it is impossible to follow these principles. But Srila Prabhupada said, but because Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is so merciful, His mercy has made the impossible possible. By His mercy, everyone can follow the principles. Everyone can chant the holy name. Everyone can advance in devotional service. So this is the beauty of Krishna consciousness. So this loving the Vaishnavas, serving the Vaishnavas, never criticizing, envying, feeling resent or bad feelings toward Vaishnavas is such an important thing. And it's such, this particular offense is the offense that can take away one's taste for bhakti. Srila Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur said that the most dangerous thing is to lose one's taste for chanting the holy name. Most dangerous thing. Of course, first we have to get that taste, and lose our taste for serving Krishna. And how does that happen? By offending Vaishnava. Most easily. And then the second offense, to consider the names of demigods or the potencies of demigods or the blessings of demigods to be greater than the name, potency, or blessings of the Supreme Personality of God. What is Krishna's blessing? Krishna's blessing is that that you may go back to Dada. It's like when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was on his way to the house of Advaita Acharya to chastise him. They went by the house of one Shakta sannyasi. And the Shakta sannyasi went out to greet them. And so Nimai Pandit, or Nimai at that time, he said, please give me a blessing, your blessings. He said, may you have long life, may you have wealth, and a good wife. And he said, this sounds like a curse. He said, you're supposed to be a sannyasi. He said, I want a blessing, go home, back to Godhead. One time, Srila Prabhupada, he was talking about renunciation. And one man said, Swamiji, if everyone becomes renounced, then what will happen to this world? And Srila Prabhupada said, I'm speaking of renunciation, maybe someone will do it. No. He said, I don't need to speak about sense gratification. Otherwise, there's no need to speak about it. Better I speak about renunciation, then maybe someone will do it. Sense gratification is automatic, just like Srila Prabhupada used to say about sex life. So there's no need for a manual. No. We're speaking about Freud. No need for a book. Automatic is there. We should speak about how to give it up, then people will become a little serious. So that's what first initiation means. That we push the potency, the position, the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead above everything else. And the third offense, to not disobey the orders of the spiritual master, or to consider the spiritual master. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says in 2 places, to consider the spiritual master an ordinary person, a resident of the material world. And then to consider the Vedic literature to be ordinary literature. What does that mean? Just like the Bhagavatam. If you go to any classical temple, you see that they have the Bhagavatam in a very special place. Sometimes I've seen temples, they have like a golden bookstand, golden with jewels. And they put the Bhagavatam, that is the Bhagavad-Dasa. And the Bhagavatam is there covered with silk cloth. And they offer prayers 15-20 minutes to the Bhagavatam before they even begin reading. I've seen that in some temples. So to blaspheme Vedic literature, also blasphemy means that once the Vedic literature speaks to us, then we ignore the Vedic literature, or we go against Vedic literature. We go against the instructions of Gita and Bhagavatam. And then to consider the glories of the Mahamantra, of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, the holy name, to be imaginary, or to give interpretation on it. Sometimes this is considered one offense, sometimes two. Depends on how you divide it. So, to consider it imaginary, to think that Rupa Goswami, Narada Muni, Prahlad Maharaj, Bali Maharaj, Gajendra, all these prayers, Queen Kunti, it's all some imagination, just to bring us to the alpha delta state of consciousness, or some mechanical thing. And then the seventh offense, very dangerous. There are certain offenses that are more dangerous than others. And the seventh offense is very dangerous. To think that chanting Hare Krishna is so powerful. In the Jaiva Dharma, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur quotes 10 verses about the holy name. And each one gives a different benefit. But then he says that all of these benefits are automatically included in the holy name. We should not. But one of them is that even if you chant it unconsciously, or without any experience or knowledge, that the holy name will take effect. So we shouldn't think, well, it's so powerful that, I can do anything and then chant the holy name again and it will be washed away. We should never think that. Because we may accidentally or by force of the three modes of nature do something wrong, and then we chant the holy name to rectify ourselves. But it doesn't mean we do something wrong thinking that later I'll chant the holy name and then I'll recover. This is very offensive. And the eighth offense, which can either be one offense or two, it depends on how you divide it, is that to think that some other thing, other Vedic process, other spiritual process, can displace or is even more important than chanting the holy name. This is called pramada, or being inattentive to the glories of the holy name. Chanting inattentively. And think something is more glorious than the holy name. This means that you're not giving the full attention. And the ninth offense means two things. Means either you explain the glories of the holy name to an unqualified person, or you give the holy name. Bhaktivinoda Thakur said also, if someone gives an initiation into the holy name to unqualified persons, this is the ninth offense against the holy name. And then 10th offense, to maintain material attachments. We already have so many attachments. And then to try to acquire more attachments, to allow yourself, where once we have these many attachments, it will take the whole lifetime to get rid of them. And then, but to acquire more and more attachments, that's not very conducive to the holy name. Especially after you understand the glories. If you don't understand the glories of the holy name, then you may think that the holy name is, that it's okay, I can continue to enjoy life. But once we understand the greatness of the holy name, and by that very definition, understanding the greatness of the holy name means that we don't develop more. Otherwise, when you don't develop more material attachments, then you know that I'm finally understanding the greatness of Krishna, the greatness of this holy name. So if we do these things, and of course, Srila Prabhupada said that if you chant attentively, then it will be very difficult to commit these offenses. If you chant the holy name attentively, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur said there are 26 qualities of a Vaishnava. The essential one is that you have to be surrendered to Krishna. And by chanting the holy name, the others will begin to manifest. And when you chant the holy name purely, all the other 25 secondary or marginal qualities of a Vaishnava will manifest in the heart, although they may manifest in different degrees according to one's varna or one's ashram. So, these offenses we have to be very careful to avoid. And then, because our whole movement, what did Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu say to Prakashananda Saraswati Thakur? Harinam, Harinam, Hariname, Viparam, Karona, Shteva, Shteva, Shteva. See, if it's only the holy name, only the holy name, only the holy name, there is no other way, there is no other way, there is no other way. So, if we understand that, then we have to be so careful, so attentive to this process of chanting. It is the most important thing. We cannot be neglectful. And so, one who is taking Harinam Diksha should meditate on this and become firmly established in the chanting of the holy name. Then, for second initiation. Second initiation means leaving behind all material attachments, becoming very attached to the instructions of these spiritual masters. So second initiation, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Samudhama, that one should control the mind, control the senses. One should be very poor, shaucho, very pure and very clean in all, and inside, in the heart, and externally. And one should be Chanting, one should be very peaceful and tolerant. If one tolerates the difficulties in life, one becomes very peaceful. But when we can't tolerate the difficulties in life, the inconveniences in life, our mind is never peaceful. We're always agitated. And Arjuna, one should be free from duplicity. One should speak the absolute truth and live by that absolute duplicity. It's not only in relation to speaking, but in relation to living. One has to live the absolute truth. Not that one makes a show of devotion and internally I do all kinds of unnecessary or unwanted things. There's a duplicity. Arjuna. And jnana vijnana. One should have knowledge and know how to utilize that knowledge properly, and follow all the rules and regulations recommended in devotional service. So, if we do these things, second initiation. But as I always mention, the most important thing, Srila Prabhupada said, many places, I looked this up once very carefully. Srila Prabhupada never says that the main purpose of taking second initiation is to worship the deity. He says the main purpose is to acquire knowledge and distribute that knowledge. This is the main purpose. Not that, that our worshiping the deity is very important for purifying the heart, for purifying our habits, but it is not the main purpose. So therefore a brahmana, at the very minimum, has to demonstrate all the good Vaishnava qualities. They have to show all good Vaishnava qualities to everyone. They have to be humble. They have to be servants of others. Just like Srila Prabhupada said, a brahmana should go outside of their house every day before taking the meal and ask 3 times in a loud voice, is anyone hungry? Anyone hungry? Anyone want to eat? And feed them. Not that you say, a loud voice. And then if there's anything left, then you take that. Just like King Ranti did. King Ranti Dev, he'd been fasting, what was it? How many days? 60 days, was it? Remember? I I can't remember, it was a long, long time. I can't remember if it was 30 days, 40 days, 60 days, it was a long time. And then he was just getting ready to take his name. He was fasting from water for many days. No water, no food. And his family also fasted with him some of the time, not the whole time. So they were all ready to eat, and they had the foodstuffs. And then the Brahmin came and said, "My dear king, do you have anything for me?" "Oh yes." He gave him half. The Brahmin ate very sumptuously. And then he was getting ready to eat, and a Shudra came. And he said, "Do you have anything to eat? I'm very hungry." But he's a king, he has to provide. So he gave the rest of his food. And then a dog keeper came with his dog and said, "We're very thirsty." So he gave all of his water. And his family was in anxiety. They weren't so surrendered as he was. But he was just so happy that he could serve her. So this is the duty of a Brahmin. Yajana patana patana tadi garahina. That a Brahmin teaches others and learns the Vedas and teaches others. A Brahmin does yajna and participates in yajna. Otherwise, when there's a yajna going on, of course for us, the yajna is so that's an easy yajna to participate in for most people. So so they participate in yajnas, they do yajnas, and also they receive charity. That part where someone may say, "Oh, very good, I want to be a Brahmin," but immediately they give it away, whatever they don't need. Now, and of course, that requires some definition. Because I think, well, what do I need? I need a Lexus. I need, a 3-story house. And after that, I'll be glad to give all my charity away. A Brahmin would live very simply. Like Markandeya Rishi. Markandeya Rishi would not even put a roof over his head. And he lived for 7 kalpas without a house. So that's surrender. So these are the activities of Brahmins. So if we follow these indications of the Shastra, just like one Bengali poem that Srila Prabhupada said many times, that we should understand this initiation is very important. It's the most important thing in our spiritual lives. Because Janame Janame say Pita Mata Hoy. That in every lifetime I've had a mother and a father. Nothing so special about that. Although we certainly honor our mother and our father, but it's nothing special. Everybody has it. Although some people may not know who it is. But just like there was one boy, he went to Gautama Muni. And he said, "I want to be your student." But Gautama Muni would only accept highly qualified Brahmins for students. So this boy, he said, "Well, who is your father?" And he said, "Well, I have to go ask my mother." So he went, and he came back and had his head a little down. He was thinking, "I'm never going to get accepted." He said, "So who is your father?" "You asked your mother?" He said, "Yes." And he said, "So who is he?" He said, "Actually, I don't know. She doesn't know who my father is." His mother was a prostitute. So Gautama Muni said, "Immediately, you are my best disciple. Because you are not afraid to speak the truth." This is what Brahman means, to speak the truth. To be attached to the truth. So if we follow these principles, this is what it means to be a disciple. And this is what it means to be Krishna conscious. So, I pray that everyone here that's taking initiation will be very, very serious in these vows. Just like we read this morning in the verse in Bhagavatam, Dattavara, very determined in one's vow, Dattavara, not Advaitavara. And I also hope that everyone here, because you're taking these vows before Shri Radha Gopinath, Shri Gopinath, Srila Prabhupada, Garudaji, the holy name of Krishna, the fire of sacrifice, and the Vaishnavas. And also, we pray to all the Vaishnavas that they will be very merciful to these devotees and give them all your blessings. So how do we give them our blessings? Nitai Gauranga Hari. We give them all of our blessings and well-wishing that they may always chant the holy name and may always be attached to the service of the lotus feet of Krishna, Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. And then the process is complete. So I'll stop here. Question? Yes.
After all the years since this one has been here in Trinidad, we have seen so many devotees accepting initiation first and second and so. And sometimes among ourselves we are speaking, and then the topic will come about, so much sacrifice devotees, we can't get on the word of the deities. We go out, carrying up, going to preach. And now we are saying that sacrifice means not necessarily to go on the altar, but go there and preach. Learn the scripture and go there and preach. But what about if someone...
I never said it wasn't necessary. I said it wasn't the main purpose.
Right, okay, that's probably fine. However, somehow if we don't do that, if we don't worship in deities or we don't preach, then that's...
Well, first of all, as far as worshipping the deity, it's very important to worship the deity. So much so that Srila Prabhupada said everyone should have deities in their home, every grihastha. And every sannyasi and brahmachari should worship the deity in the temple. So important that Srila Prabhupada explains when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that it's not necessary even to get initiated to be able to chant the holy name purely. That Srila Prabhupada explains so many verses from Sanatana Goswami, Jiva Goswami, how without initiation one cannot progress in spiritual life, because without worshipping the deity one cannot become purified. So one has to worship the deity, either by doing direct worship or by carrying out the mission of the deity, or both. But everyone has to worship the deity. It's just not the main purpose. That's my whole. And what to speak of preaching? Anyone who is not connected to the preaching movement of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will find it very difficult to progress spiritually. If we don't, if we're not connected to the Sankirtan movement, and how are we connected? By serving the Sankirtan movement. That means you do some service in the temple, or you do some service so that the Sankirtan movement goes on. We support the Rath Yatra, we support the temple, we support the preaching, we invite people to our homes, we conduct ourselves in such a way, even in the workplace, where people become attracted to Krishna. We give out books, we give out prasadam. This is the Sankirtan movement. Sankirtan movement has three main angas: prasadam, book distribution, and distributing the holy name. If we're not connected to one of these angas, then our spiritual progress will be very difficult and very slow and very cumbersome. We have to be connected somehow or another, either by giving. Best thing, give your life. If you can't give your life, it says give your intelligence, give your wealth. If you have no wealth, give your intelligence. And if you have no intelligence, then chant the holy name. That's the least thing you can do. Chant the holy name and give the holy name to others. So, or all four. Better all four. Give your life, give your wealth, give your intelligence, and give your words. Glorifying Krishna. So, yeah, we have to do this. Otherwise there's no possibility. And that's why, as you say, you've seen so many initiations. There are hundreds and hundreds of devotees who have been initiated. Well, where are they? Some of them, we can't even remember what they look like. And not only here in Trinidad, everywhere. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada said, don't be surprised who goes, be surprised who stays. Because devotional service, of the 6 characteristics of devotional service, one of them is sudurlabha. Very difficult. Very difficult to fully understand devotional service and manifest it in our lives to the fullest degree, which allows us to stay in Krishna consciousness and progress. In order to do that, the Bhagavatam says, you give your heart, or all your feelings, all your thoughts, all your words, and all your actions to worshiping the Supreme Personality of God. Then devotional service to Krishna will become your inheritance. Any other questions? Yes.
Can you explain how is it that the Prabhupada said that the residents of Vrindavan do not need initiation? And how is it that the residents of Vrindavan do not need initiation? And how is it that the holy name don't need initiation to chant the holy name purely, as you mentioned?
Because the residents of Vrindavan, even Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he advised Jagadananda Pandit not to go to Vrindavan. He said the residents of Vrindavan are very special. And he told Rupa and Sanatan that when you go to Vrindavan, don't imitate the residents of Vrindavan, but also don't criticize. Because somehow or another they've taken birth there. They're naturally attached to Krishna. They're naturally attached to Radha. Every time you see them, they say Radhe, Radhe, Krishna, Krishna, Radhe, Radhe. So they're naturally attached, but they also, generally speaking, because they have residence in Vrindavan in that condition, because something they didn't do quite right in their last life. Means they were devotees, and they practically achieved perfection in devotional service. But something was missing. Something was not fully manifest, fully ripened, fully matured. So they take residence in Vrindavan, and living under the shelter of Yoga Maya, even though they do so many apparently not very strict activities, but just by taking birth, they have the possibility to go back home after that. So that's why. But better they take initiation. That's much more secure. Because I know one resident of Vrindavan, and not the only one, but this is one I knew personally. He lived in Vrindavan all of his life, but he was a little bit of a rascal. So, all of a sudden he was doing something, and someone attacked him with a knife. And then they rushed him to the hospital in Delhi, and he left his body in Delhi. So, something he did wrong, he offended some Vaishnava. And therefore he didn't get the benefit of leaving his body in Vrindavan, even though he lived there practically his whole life. So, you have to be very careful also, even being a resident in Vrindavan. Not that we think, well, I like to watch my cable TV and I like this and that, so let me go to Vrindavan and I'll get cable and get a pack of BDs and get some bong and chew bong and bong is paste made from marijuana, and then I like all these things, so let me do it in Vrindavan, and then I'll die and then go back home back to God. Have my cake and eat it too. But that doesn't work. Yes.
Mr. Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada have demonstrated love, right? And in the three afterlife, his wife, he asked his wife, because people asking him this question, and it seems a kind of conflict of interest in that his wife didn't want to get initiation, right? And he told her, "Tell me," and he left her, and it takes an years. How it is that he didn't continue to tolerate her and try to get her to accept initiation? Because as I say, initiation was so important.
Well, Srila Prabhupada tried many times. It wasn't just initiation, he wanted her to, help him in his mission. Because Srila Prabhupada said, even though my spiritual master gave me an order and I could not fulfill it at the time, I never forgot for one moment. He said, I could not do it at the time, but I never forgot, and I tried to fulfill it to my best ability. So Srila Prabhupada's frustration wasn't that she wouldn't take initiation. His frustration was that she wouldn't cooperate with him in carrying out the mission that was given to him by the spiritual master. So he tried and he tried and he tried. But what he suspected was that she threw away his manuscript from Bhagavad Gita. He said, this is the last straw. So Prabhupada said, tea or me? No. And she said, tea. Is that okay? Okay. You take tea, I'll take Krishna. Any other question? Okay, so now we'll continue with the initiation. First of all, Bhakta Ante.